Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about long vision. In life, you're told that your vision will blur as time goes on. You're also told that you will become wiser with time. There are those that do not become wiser with time and end up with dull brains and blurry vision. Those people do as they are told and accept their fate without any questions. Those people are easily manipulated. It is important that you realize that the wealthy reptilian overlords are also affected by the same natural forces that shape this planet. The difference being, they see the problems much earlier than common folk. They capitalize on a situation, create a bigger problem, then blame you for the problem, and offer a solution to the same problem they created. Sound familiar? Okay, here we go. If you control people, and you control the food, then you have complete control, because you have taken away a man's livelihood. You have taken away a woman's means to provide food for her children. When you take away the food supply, then you see the most desperate of human beings. And then if you can sprinkle in big doses of confusion and deflection and misdirection, then the onus is on the people who choose to look the other way or choose to avoid the glaringly obvious solution to the problem or the reason for the problem. So one thing I've been noticing is that food processing plants have been catching on fire and being destroyed in explosions. In the past year, 137 food processing facilities have been set on fire and destroyed with explosions. So there are, in the month of March and in the month of April, this began to accelerate because you began to see these fires in these West Coast processing plants. You had processing plants in Indiana. You had food storage facilities that were directly connected to Walmart that were set on fire. You're seeing these saboteurs go into the food supply chain and create artificial shortages. And then it's being blamed on coronavirus and COVID. And that, well, we had to kill these 3,000 cattle because they were infected with the coronavirus. No, you killed those 3,000 cattle because you knew it would create an impact in that community, in that direct area.
They make up the same lies every time. What they say is, okay, we had too many cattle that couldn't go to slaughter, so we just had to kill them because, and they do it with pigs, they do it with chickens. And like you said, they'll come up with one or two reasons. Or they couldn't get them to market fast enough. That's another one they use. Where, we had to wind down the processing plants because of COVID, but now we got this ranch just sitting here, and this food is about to go to market. Well, we got to kill it. The shit doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even add up. But they always find a reason to kill, thousands of heads of cattle?
Right. But yet it's something that it continues and it goes on and on. So I'm going to read about some of these fires and pretty much arson, these saboteur explosions at these food processing plants. So
look, the thing is, if 4 or 5 car dealerships caught on fire, it would be like an epidemic. You'll be all over the news. What's going on? Is this an act of terrorism? But you got these food processing plants catching on fire, being destroyed, explosions. But no, it's not even making the news. It's because it was planned.
Check this out. So on March 22nd of this year, the Tri-City Herald newspaper in Oregon reported that Shearer's Foods potato chip plant in Hermiston, Oregon was gone after a boiler explosion and its subsequent fire annihilated the facility. The outlet reported that the boiler was fueled by natural gas and that the company supplied potato chips and corn chips throughout the western United States. 7 employees were hospitalized in the blast. The Herald stated that the facility is home to nearly 400 employees. Now, there's another one. March 31st, Texas-based Rio Fresh suffered a fire that severely damaged an onion processing facility. Local media outlet KRGV reported that the site employed 300 people and that hundreds of thousands of warehouse space and structure was damaged from the fire. One staff member was quoted as stating, "If I had to guess, anywhere from 50 to 100 truckloads of onions were lost in the fire, and you can still you can still see them burning in the distance." So, another one. On March 16th, a massive fire wiped out much of a Walmart fulfillment center in Plainfield, Indiana. An event is serious enough to bring in the ATF to investigate. And then also there's one in New Hampshire's East Conway beef and pork disaster on April 11th, when a fire broke out serious enough that it took respondents 16 hours to extinguish. That's a chemical fire. It takes chemicals to do that, to burn that long. Chemicals burn like that. So, there's more. I'll read another one. So, April 20th, local news station ABC 15 said the Phoenix-based St. Mary's Food Bank had replenished the 3 trailers and 50,000 pounds of beef lost with inventory from its own supply. So, this fire, they're not aware of how it started, but on March 28th, the Maricopa Food Pantry, a local food bank in Arizona, lost 50,000 pounds worth of food in a fire that occurred just 15 minutes after their food bank closed. The blaze went 40 to 50 feet in the air, just pure black smoke that engulfed the entire neighborhood.
They're destroying the infrastructure for food services.
Yes. Check this out. April 18th. Okay. April 18th, there is Idaho's Gem State Processing Plant. And the local police department reported that there was a crash, an airplane crash. An airplane crashed into the building because there was a smokestack emitting smoke into the air. Why is a plane flying that low that the smokestack from a processing plant is causing visibility problems? Why are you even flying near that? But see, that was April 18th. And the pilot, identified as a 30-year-old woman with 11 years of flight experience, was transporting UPS packages from Salt Lake City.
Damn, that's a real plane. That's not even a little plane.
It was probably like a small personal jet, a private jet. But yeah, dude, there's more. There's a story, April 13th. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So April 13th, a major food California processing plant belonging to Taylor Farms burned almost completely to the ground. USA Today affiliate newspaper, The Californian, quoted Deputy Fire Chief saying about 85 to 95% of the building is a total loss. The article states that the facility employed 1,000 people. There are parts of the building that are separate and that are still operational. As far as the main processing facility, it's considered a total loss. Every fire is wiping out all of the food.
Total loss. Now, there's one of two things happening. Either they're intentional, which we do believe they're intentional, or the food we eat is fucking flammable. God damn. What kind of chemicals are we eating? Shit. If the shit catches on fire, it just does not burn out, no matter how much water you put on it.
Right.
Look.
Listen, so this is what I've just read is about basically 5 major food processors across 4 different states. And I'm
within 2 or 3 months, though. That's like 3 months.
Right.
You didn't even think the whole year. You were talking about April through.
No, this is 1 month. This is like basically
March and April.
I looked it up, and it was from one full moon to the next full moon, and I'm like, that's weird. So basically, what this do is it's exacerbating already escalating inflation
That's
and
well,
creating a
two
supply
things.
chain crisis.
Yeah, yeah, I was about to say, yep. That's where I was going next. The supply chain. So
Right.
go ahead.
But all of this is like really odd, man. It's like, there's this much like operator error going on chronically, like all at the same time. That's
the,
impossible.
the other thing that's been on my mind regarding that whole food thing. Look, the person who owns most of the farmland in Nebraska is Bill Gates now, and we were talking about how big a product, how much corn we export. Well, what would happen if this motherfucker has like a contract with another country, but our people over here starving? Wouldn't he still meet his demand for whoever he has a contract with? Like right now, he might have a contract with China. I'm just giving an example. China's going through their own problems right now with the mortgage crisis and people protesting. Like a lot of people protesting. They don't even want to pay their mortgages. That's another conversation. But can you imagine if all that farmland is privately owned now, and he decides to sell his grain to Canada or Mexico or some shit? Well, fuck around. We got people starving over here. He he could still make his money while the people who live here starve. That shit could actually happen. Like where you got millions of acres and millions of bushels, excuse me, of corn ready to feed people, but somebody else has dibs on it. That shit could happen.
Okay. I have something directly related to that. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
September 16th of this year, coming up, basically like, 5 weeks from now, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange will take delivery for the grain and other farm commodities that were harvested this year. Now, here's the problem. This year saw a lot of drought, which affected the crop output. It saw fires, wildfires. It saw the shortages in the food that was already processed, right? And the grain that was already processed that was being sent to these processing facilities. So then that creates even more demand for, all right, well, we lost all these potatoes. We lost all this grain. We lost all this wheat. We lost all this corn. That means the cost of cereal and pasta and potato chips and everything on the center aisle, in the center aisles, the center part of the grocery store is going to go up. That means everything on the outer aisle, the outer part of the grocery store, the fresh produce, all that stuff is going to go up. So when this begins to happen, then you have these huge grain transporters like Cargill. And you work for the railroad, you know who the fuck Cargill is. When Cargill then goes and buys up a whole bunch of this grain that's left, and then what happens is these food processors have to go directly to the grain mill to buy this shit, right? Instead of the mercantile market, they're going straight to the grain mill to buy this shit. Well, what if Cargill beats them to the punch and buys up all that, and now they have to buy directly from Cargill at an inflated price? So that's a problem.
Look, we keep seeing these videos on social media. I saw that guy in South Carolina said that the Walmart is sold out of food. And it's not even a natural disaster right now. We're not talking about like a Katrina, Rita, tornado situation or any of that shit. This is just regular weekend, and they ain't got no food. And we kind of shrug this shit off. But if you pay attention, they're gradually preparing you for a food shortage.
Yes.
They're giving you a heads up.
They're not fully stocking the shelves. So what I notice is, like, when I go to some of these stores, I go to Walmart, I go to the grocery stores, I notice that they're not fully stocking the shelves the way they used to. Dude, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you can go to the grocery store, say you're going to go buy some cereal. That cereal box that you're pulling from the front, if you look behind it, it goes all the way to the back.
Yep.
Now, when you go to get some cereal,
10 deep and 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 wide.
Yes, but I mean, you lucky to see 10 deep. It might be 6 of them in there. Like,
yeah,
y'all getting pretty light on this cereal, ain't you? Like, ain't that many people eating this shit.
Look, when COVID first happened, I got into a discussion with one of our homeboys. He's like, man, this is the problem with capitalism. This is the failure of capitalism. And we and hold
Don't
it.
fall for
I
that.
know, but hold it. But you got to remember when we grew up, they ran companies differently. Now the excuse is whenever a company does something that's foul, they just say it's good for business, and we accept that shit. Back in the day, you had all the cereal you wanted, you had all the produce you wanted. The shit was fresh, and if it wasn't fresh, they tossed it. You know what I'm saying? And it kept the shit going. Like I remember working at Hardee's when I was a kid. If those burgers was out there too long, they trashed that shit. Had a whole bucket full of stuff, and they
Do you remember this bullshit ass place in the 90s that was called Hot and Now?
why do I remember? Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember the name, but
it opened while we were still in high school. Okay. And this place, what they did, they would take the old fries from McDonald's and reheat them and sell it to you again.
oh, that's terrible.
You remember that place?
I remember the
It
name.
was it was on
I,
it
I
was on
remember
90th and Dodge.
I remember a comedian making fun of that shit. Remember a comedian said, "Yeah, that's just what it is. Hot now, no flavor, no taste, no selection." I remember that shit. Oh my god! But I just know that back in the day, our supply chain would never run out because it was designed that they had like a 90-day supply of everything. You know, stores had a 90-day supply of this, and then once you fell below something, you ordered more. But now it's different. Like literally, they're doing this on demand, live, and this, that, and the computer tells us when to order. Once we get down to 3 boxes, it automatically orders this. So you don't even have stock anymore. And most of these businesses, you know, back in the day had a warehouse. They don't even have a warehouse. They get it directly from the manufacturer within 5 days. That's dangerous when you're dealing with the food supply, or because, like I said, back in the day, you had stores had like so much stuff stocked in back. I remember. I will give an example. If you went to a store and they were out of the Nikes you wanted, you would ask them, "You got some in the back?" They will come back with 5 or 6 more boxes. You ask a motherfucker, "You got one in the back?" Like, "Nah, man. What we got is what you see." Like, man, you didn't even go check, dude. I know there ain't nothing.
They're stocking just enough to meet the minimum demand.
Demand, yeah. And like I said, they don't have shit in back. Everything they got is up front, and they might have 4 or 5 sizes. They don't have the sizes. They don't have, and so I'm just talking about clothes. But the real thing we're talking about, real talk, is food and water, and that's a huge deal right now. Now, when I was in Vegas, they said they have 700 days of water in Vegas, and they keep showing you that big Lake Mead and how high Lake Mead was in the 70s. They show you that it's like damn near a mountain or this big cliff, and a sign on there says no water skiing, because that's where the water was at. In the 80s. The water was like 40 feet higher, and you keep hearing that stuff. Now, when I was flying into Vegas, I saw some lakes, some big lakes out in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know if they're full of shit or not.
Those are reservoirs owned by rich people.
Look, I've seen reservoirs. These are reservoirs. He is absolutely correct. But what I'm saying is that what they're doing, they're creating scarcity, they're creating need. And what's going to happen is the poor people are going to fight it out, hurt each other, kill each other, and
okay.
Soylent Green. Go ahead.
Check it out. So
that's your favorite movie.
The economy, what they want to do. This is what they want to do. This is the Great Reset. You see, when they say reset, they're not just talking about medical. They say the Great Depression. That means like no money, everybody's fucked up. Actually, black people weren't fucked up. We were in a bubble, economic bubble, because of segregation, and we were cool. We had farms. There are a lot of black people who had farms and fed themselves. But so this Great Reset, the plan, if you look at it, if you peel back the layers, what you see is they want to, what they do is they destroy the economy first. And then the economic reset happens, which brings universal basic income, because there's no jobs for men to work, and there's no jobs for women to work, and then their kids are in school, but they barely have any food to eat. So this creates problems. So what do? You come along with this plan The same way everybody was getting these checks during the pandemic.
See, okay,
Hold on. There's universal
yeah,
basic income.
no, you saying some deep shit. All I was going to say is that I kind of thought that they would just dial down the economy, that they would bring the economy back, but just like, let's say 30% less. Where, see, and if you do it at 30% less, the idea of people getting rich that aren't already rich ain't gonna happen. You feel what I'm saying? That you're only going to the stores that have stuff. Walmart will have stuff. A couple major grocery stores will have stuff. A couple retailers like Target will have stuff. But the mom and pop shops will get choked out. And then so you're only buying for like 5 or 6 retailers. Same thing with media. You got like what 5 or 8 companies that run media right now. You know, you got Disney, which they just bought Fox, and you got ABC, which is owned by everything's owned by the same.
Look at what's going on though. When these companies buy up all of the media companies, they control the output. They control what you're listening to. Listen to me. I love comic books. I grew up on comic books. I love superhero stories. And they're great. They're great. But I'm going to tell you something. I don't want to watch them all the time. I don't. Like, I'm a filmmaker, so I like independent cinema.
So say some deep shit. Are you looking forward to any comic book movies right now? Maybe Black Panther 2?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Nothing has me hyped because they are controlling it in such a way. They handpick which ones they want you to watch. Listen, what's going on with cinema is what happened with mixed martial arts. And UFC went around and they bought up all the other smaller fight organizations, and they controlled anything that have the potential to become a super fight. Now, any real fight fan knows what I'm talking about, because there are fights.
Pride used to do the shit just the opposite. Pride had super fights.
I know, but they got bought by the UFC. To my point. Okay. But wait. So the thing is that with super fights, there was 2 fighters that that were just dynamite. And if they put this fight together, it would be phenomenal. But they didn't. They slow jerked the market.
If you want an example, the fight that do you know why did Randy Couture leave the UFC? He retired like 2 or 3 times. It's not he retired, but then he kind of healed, came back like a monster. Then he left the UFC again. He wanted to fight one fight in the world. He wanted to fight Fedor Emelianenko. Fedor was signed to Pride.
And it would have been perfect. It would have been Captain America against the evil empire.
I'm a Fedor fan, but I know what you're saying. Exactly. Rocky 2 or Rocky 4.
I'm talking about the symbolism.
Yeah, I know. That's why. And so, literally, he got him to sign on the contract, but then all of a sudden, the UFC started suing him. Well, do you know the fight that Dana did want? Dana wanted Brock Lesnar to fight Fedor. At the time, Fedor would have killed Brock. I'm sorry, y'all just need to understand that. All these people, don't know what the deal was. And another example, Chuck Liddell versus Wanderlei Silva. That fight was supposed to happen like 12 years before it happened. But instead, we're getting them fighting the UFC when they're all geriatric and shit. The UFC does not let super fights happen because that makes stars. If you make a big enough star,
you're controlling the narrative.
The market. You control the whole market.
It's a narrative. No, it's a narrative. Yeah. Listen, for the longest time, the UFC had this narrative, and they will let black men be the heavyweight champions. And they push this potato head white boy image as any fight champion below light heavyweight. They always push this image because there's like, this is our demo and we got to make these people happy. We can't have a bunch of black guys just kicking ass and taking over. And you can see fights that were clearly thrown. You know what I'm saying? But listen, we're getting too far off topic here. We got to stay on topic. Listen, the point I'm making is that they are controlling the entertainment market the same way the fight market was controlled, and now thus controlling the narrative. Because now you have this big entity that controls all the entertainment and music, right? Because people think, oh, well, Disney don't own this record label. No. It's all about umbrellas. Ask Rihanna, okay? It's umbrella under another umbrella.
One of the deepest things I heard yesterday when somebody says, "You ever wonder why you hear about Kim Kardashian and Pete breaking up, but you're seeing it on CNN?" And then you wonder why you hear about Kanye and this person on CNN. That's not real news. But then who owns CNN? Warner Brothers, the biggest record company. You were just talking about the record company. So that's why they're more interested in giving you entertainment than news because they're an entertainment company. Say, on the flip side,
Because
Fox,
nobody watches CNN, so they're going to do anything they can to get people to watch it,
but they're also
including crank up the
control.
nightmare machine to create a
Yes.
narrative of fear.
Look, it's about entertainment and fear. Whoever has the most fear mongering, they win.
But
And
but think
on the
about
flip,
this though. Again, I'm talking about long vision, so you got to see the whole picture.
oh yeah, yeah. No.
Fear,
On the flip side, what you mean
fear,
about Fox?
fear is nourishment for demons.
Oh,
So
look, hold on. We said that shit years ago. That when you look at some of these ancient societies, they were actually run on fear, and I'm not saying figuratively. I mean literally. When you're scared, your vibrations are different, and you're getting off a different set of energy. And these motherfuckers feed off that shit. They found out some kind of way to make energy off of us. And when you look at how religions ran, and when you look at all these what's the word I'm looking for? These super sites that were built years ago. The whether it's the pyramids, whether it's uh
or the
Chichen
soul
Itza.
recycling machine of Gobekli Tepe.
Go yes, you. So when you sit here and see that shit, you gotta wonder how the fuck did they build that shit? And the reason they built it was not because of fear, but on fear. Fear is what supplied the energy, was the energy source. Now back to what you were saying before, like literally, you're having it set up to where you have two or three companies who run the news media, and if that's the case, they control the narrative. When you realize the Murdoch family runs Fox, but they own all kinds of newspapers across the world. So trust me, if there was, say, for instance, say there was 100 of these food processing plants that got burned up, but since this is the agenda of these evil overlords, as my homeboy said, so they're not gonna run that. They'll run it, but they'll run it like on the last page of a newspaper, or they'll give that 34-second blip. RDA food plant burned up in Delaware. Now, what about Pete and Kim Kardashian? Oh my word! That's how they get you. And it's true, but they're just not saying enough of it to where you understand the real threat. And then you start arguing over vaccines again. Then you start arguing over this different shit again. So, but it's the same thing. Our big fear is that if every food company is owned by the same person or the same couple people, you know, what are we going to do when they decide not to sell to us? What are we going to do when they decide this ain't healthy? Or you know what? Gatorade is the only thing we sell. We don't sell plain water. Nobody drinks plain water anymore. You're controlling people's health because we know health and nutrition. Nutrition is really health. All this other shit is just what you do when you don't have health.
So there are countries that are experiencing civil unrest right now because of food shortages. Sri Lanka, Egypt, Albania, Argentina, and several African countries are having problems with grain and crop production, and that's causing civil unrest. Argentina has ceased all corn exports. Meanwhile, the cost of food is soaring there. So on a website called Allianz Global Corporate and Specialty, there's a report, and it says the United Nations has warned of the destabilizing potential of disrupted supply chains and surging food, fuel, and fertilizer prices, particularly in the context of Russia and Ukraine representing around 30% of the world's supply of wheat. All of this is planting the seeds for political instability and unrest around the globe, said UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in March of this year.
Hey, and don't forget, Russia and China did come up with that new currency for their oil, and the same thing that Gaddafi tried to do. Russia and China have done it, and is attached to the minerals in the ground. The exact same thing Gaddafi tried to do.
So the economic and insured losses from previous protests have been significant, the article continues, creating significant claims for companies and their insurers. In 2018, the Yellow Vest movement in France rallied to protest fuel prices and economic inequality, with French retailers losing $1.1 billion in revenue in just a few weeks. A year later in Chile, a large-scale demonstration was sparked by an increase in subway fares, leading to insured loss of $3 billion.
Wow.
In the U.S., the 2020 protests over the death of George Floyd in police custody are estimated to have resulted in over $2 billion insured losses, while the South African riots of July 2021, which followed the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma and were fueled by layoffs and economic inequality, caused damage worth of $1.7 billion. Earlier this year in Canada, France, and New Zealand, demonstrations against COVID-19 restrictions included convoys of truckers, creating disruptions across major cities. Of course, they want to blame it on the people, but that's what they do. They create the problem, and then they want to blame the people for the problem that they created. So, go ahead, bro.
I said, no, the reason I brought up China, they pulled the tanks out again. And you had talked about
But why did they do that? Because there was a run on Chinese banks, and people went to pull their money out, and they stopped people by doing that, by parking those fucking tanks in front of the banks.
Oh, it's more than that. It's so bad with the mortgage. So people are paying the mortgage before they get the house. The housing supply is so bad. Like, say you want to buy a house. So you're like, okay, my house will be ready Monday. So they start making a payment. Well, the house ain't ready. It's 3 months later. The house still ain't ready. House still ain't available. So these people are paying mortgages before they even get the houses. And so they start protesting. They stopped paying their mortgage altogether. Start protesting. They again, like you said, they got these tanks in front of these banks to protect these banks. It's crazy, but there's a lot of civil unrest in the world, and it's only going to get worse. The whole idea that.
But look at the cause. Look beyond the people that are upset. Look beyond the people that are rioting. Look beyond that. What preceded that? What caused the hiccup?
Yeah, don't blame the victim. All these people are getting fucked over. We're all being fucked over. You know, we know there's more than enough oil. We know this. People are. There's a Nigerian boy right now that just invented a electric car that you only got to charge one time, because he has generators in the car. So once you charge it that one time, it runs forever. They is not releasing that shit over here, my nigga. You understand what I'm saying? People are coming up with solutions, but as soon as they come up with a solution, they're dead. Oh boy, that security guard / retired cop up in Buffalo, prime example. Another one invented a car that ran on water. And how come whenever you invent a car that runs on water, you die within the year? What is that about?
Because you and your idea disrupts a system of energy production that requires burning to create fuel. So if you remove the whole combustible part out of that, then you're creating energy without combustion, and that's a problem. See, but they allow it. No. But see, they allow it in passive solar. They allow passive energy production.
Look. Here's another thing. They have carburetors that get 80 miles to 100 miles per gallon of gas. There are carburetors right now that were invented in the 60s and 70s, but guess who bought the patent? GM bought the patent. So you start finding. So how come whenever the government passes more stringent laws regarding fuel consumption and fuel, they just pop up with a car a year later that 58 miles per gallon? Like, wait a minute, how come you didn't? But it's the exact same engine, just tweaked a little bit different. They already have the technology. There's enough technology to give us every damn thing we need. But if you did that, the rich people wouldn't get richer. And so that is what we're saying, is that literally there's plenty of farmland, plenty of food, everything can be handled, expeditiously. You can create a situation where there is no waste, where everybody's eating and everybody's healthy. But if everybody's healthy, then there's no fear. And like I said, the biggest commodity out there is fear.
And no fear doesn't make money. The lack of fear doesn't make money. I
Yeah,
mean, okay,
when people ain't scared, say it again. When people ain't scared, they're not going to, or they spend their money on what they want to spend it on. But when they're scared, they'll spend it on toilet paper and
listen,
bullets.
when man was created, he lived in utopia. And
Paradise, yes.
he fell through his own ignorance out of this paradise. But in this fall, there was another great fall. There was a war in heaven. And those that fell from heaven, that were kicked out because they sided with somebody who did not want to obey, who wanted to grab power for himself. And so,
in charge.
yes, he wanted to be the one in charge. You know, just like a little kid that just feels like at 13 years old, he knows everything or she knows everything and they can go live by themselves and they don't need their fucking parents and they running the show. But listen, those fallen ones hate humanity so much. They still do because we have souls and they don't. And so they want us as far from paradise as possible.
The grace of God, they don't want us to experience that.
No. Here's the concept. What is one of the most powerful sources in the universe? What is one of the most powerful motivations in the universe? And that is not love. It's glory. It's glory.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Think about this. Oh, no. Pause. Think about this for a second. Glory be to God. Glory to Allah. You know, Buddha be praised. Listen, man, if you give the glory to a entity that gives you love, it's reciprocated. But if you give the glory to a lesser light, a lower energy, a lower vibration, what they're going to do is they're going to give you earthly satisfaction. And so what happens is you wind up in a triangle choke with a demon on your back. And day by day, that demon whispers in your ear and keeps breaking you down until you accept that demon and allow that demon into your vessel. And then
just like crack, like any other addiction.
And then what the demon gives you is attractive. And then you're addicted to what you're getting because these are all physical and earthly pleasures until you realize that you have given up something that you really can't give them, that you've offered them something you can't give, right? You can't deliver what you've offered. So then you find yourself calling out to a higher power, needing an exorcism. How do I get rid of this demon that I allowed to break me down and I gave in to its will and surrendered and let it take control, and now it's in control and there's nothing that I can do.
Idolatry. You're worshiping false idols. And you sit here and do this shit. and you willfully do this shit. You know, like I said, it started out
but what's crazy though, what's even crazier is that there's generational possession. And you have these old families with old money, and they willfully give their children over to possession. They train their children to be possessed because it maintains that earthly wealth that they have. Until this, hold on.
They made.
Yes, but until they have amassed so much wealth they can't spend it. And so then they find ways through this demon whispering into their ear. Listen, I'm going to tell you how to create this technology that allows you to open doors into other dimensions and bring the old ones back. And then you can then take this chip and put into your head, download your consciousness, not your soul, your consciousness into this chip, and then we'll put that into another body. That's a golem. So then what they're teaching you are dark arts and, the knowledge of these fallen ones and how to keep yourself alive. All they're doing is showing you how to remain a prisoner, and you're a willful participant in your imprisonment.
Your own demise, your own imprisonment.
But listen. For those who don't watch this show called Westworld, check it out. It is a trip. It is about man versus AI. But the AI started in this theme park for adults that was based on the Old West. And the people that populated the Old West were these AI in these human-like bodies, right? In these meat suits. And so these AI became conscious and wanted to be free. They left the park eventually, and they began to take over the world. And so what they've been doing is they've been getting humans, just like these demons, to submit to them. And then they've been trapping them by downloading their consciousness and putting it into different bodies and making them do the work for them while they're taking over the world. Listen, if you think it's a game when it ain't, boy, you got another thing coming, let me tell you.
Look, here's what bugs me because, like I said, you always key on this shit. You're always like, it's pedophilia, pedophilia. And you're like, man, why the hell is that always the final answer? But right now, 14-year investigation of the CIA, all kinds of all these different agents were pedophiles. They were one of them.
It took 10 years for them to get the documents to
no, it was, yeah,
to journalists.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that's absolutely correct. And these motherfuckers looking at kiddie porn on CIA computers at work. Had sex with a 2-year-old. Just crazy, fucked up ass shit. And these are the motherfuckers supposed to be watching us. These are the motherfuckers supposed to be protecting us. Nah, they're more worried about creating secrets. So they have this is how the FBI used to be when Hoover was in charge. Like this motherfucker had all secrets on everybody, and that's what they're doing. They got secrets on people just so those people don't exploit our secrets. This shit is disgusting. It's crazy. Look, the point we're always trying to make is that they create these problems on purpose, and sometimes it's a long game. It's slow, but the bottom line is you got somebody controlling your food supply, and we're poor. They're controlling the masses, and eventually the masses will kill a shitload of themselves off, whether it's drugs, food, or whatever, and they'll get what they want. They'll get these numbers down because remember, there's too many people in the world. Every time you turn around, you hear Bill Gates. We have too many people in Africa. We got to control those numbers. What's this we shit, nigga? You don't own Africa. You're not even African. Why the fuck do you think you have the right to discuss what goes on in a continent you have nothing to do with? It's because, one, he's entitled, and two, he wants these numbers down, and it really bugs him when these numbers go up. Don't know why. Maybe it's because his mom was in Planned Parenthood. Who knows? But whenever you see Gates talking about Africa, he's always talking about the number of people over there. And like I said, it has nothing to do with him.
It disturbs him because there's too many people, and he wants to reduce the population to a controllable population because he wants what they have. These are pirates. These people are pirates, man.
Look, the thing is, he wants wealth for the sake of wealth. He just wants control. He is a fucking evil James Bond villain motherfucker right there. You know, that's all. Look, like I said, people, you need to stock your food and start making your own food. Start pickling shit. Start taking care of your shit.
So there was a story on July 29th of this year, a couple weeks ago. And the story goes, urban heat islands. According to the U.S. government, the new study finds 96% of the U.S. temperature stations are corrupted. The term urban heat island refers to the fact that the cities tend to get much warmer than their surrounding rural landscapes, particularly during the summer. This temperature difference occurs when cities' unshaded roads and buildings gain heat during the day and radiate that heat into the surrounding air. As a result, highly developed urban areas can experience mid-afternoon temperatures that are 15 degrees Fahrenheit to 20 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the surrounding vegetated areas. The new study that's called Corrupted Climate Stations, the official U.S. surface temperature record remains fatally flawed, finds that approximately 96% of the U.S. temperature stations used to measure climate change failed to meet what NOAA considers to be acceptable and uncorrupted placement by its own published standards. The detailed report was compiled via satellite and in-person survey visits to NOAA weather stations to contribute to the official, quote-unquote, land temperature data in the United States. The research shows that 96% of the stations are corrupted by localized effects of urbanization, producing heat bias because of their close proximity to asphalt machinery and other heat-producing, heat-trapping, and or heat-accentuating objects. Placing temperature stations in such locations violates NOAA's own published standards and strongly undermines the legitimacy and magnitude of the official consensus on long-term climate warming trends in the United States. With a 96% warm bias in the U.S. temperature measurements, it is impossible to use any statistical methods to derive an accurate climate trend for the United States. That was from the Heartland Institute senior fellow Anthony Watts. He's a director of that study. Watts goes on to say that data from the stations have not been corrupted by faulty placement show a rate of warming in the United States reduced by almost half compared to all the stations. So basically, the ones that are not placed, the stations that are not placed near these urban areas or by these power stations, their readings are half as low. So NOAA's requirements and standards for National Weather Service climate observations is a document that instructs that in temperature data instruments must be over level terrain, being earth or sod, typical of the area around the station, and at least 100 feet from any extensive concrete or paved surface. I'll read that again. This document, this white paper from the NOAA says that these temperature data instruments must be over level terrain, typical of the area around the station, and at least 100 feet from any extensive concrete or paved surface. And also that all attempts will be made to avoid areas where rough terrain or air drainage are proven to result in non-representative temperature data. If you look at the unperturbed stations that adhere to NOAA's published standards, ones that are correctly located and free of localized urban heat biases, they display about half the rate of warming compared to perturbed stations that have such biases, explained Watts. Yet NOAA continues to use data from their warm-biased, century-old surface temperature networks to produce monthly and yearly reports to the U.S. public on the state of the climate. The issue of localized heat bias with these stations have proven in a real-world experiment conducted by NOAA's laboratory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and published a peer-reviewed science journal. By contrast, NOAA operates a state-of-the-art surface temperature network called the U.S. Climate Reference Network. It is free of localized heat biases by design, but the data it produces is never mentioned in monthly or yearly climate reports published by NOAA for public consumption. People, there is some fuckery afoot in this whole climate change, global warming thing. All right? What Mr. Watts just said there is that they have these stations that measure the temperatures in the city, and they have certain ones have been placed in areas that shouldn't be because it's going to make the temperatures read 10 degrees to 20 degrees hotter than normal.
It's going to be corrupted by the city itself.
So if you are a young, impressionable college graduate that went to school for meteorology and you have wide eyes and you want to go work for the NOAA, then you may find yourself being tempted by certain interest groups that need you to falsify these reports. Oh, what happens? They cook the books. It happens in the fight game. It happens in sports. You have mobbed up refs to get paid off. You got mobbed up climate scientists that are falsifying these reports, or the directors of certain regional departments that are in the cities that are placing these temperature stations in areas that they know are going to get higher temperature readings.
You got to remember, these scientists are just like they're corrupted like everybody else. If you're doing your research and you need grant money, right? So who gives you the grant money? Some special interest group. And they're saying that, hey, you know what? We need higher degrees. You're going to find higher degrees. Because you need that grant money to pay your bills and work on your thesis. So all of a sudden, you now become corrupt. It's real simple. You might not feel like you're corrupt. You're not like lying on purpose, but you definitely find whatever information coincides with the findings they want. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so now Let's look all the way down the field. Matter of fact, let's go up. Let's take a drone shot from above the stadium. Let's zoom all the way out so we can see the whole game. Okay?
The big picture, the whole field.
Man, the real deal. Because now I'm gonna drop. You thought we was dropping some shit before. Let's talk about sunspots. Now, there was a book that I got some years ago, and I knew I had to hold on to this book. I read the book. I found it immensely useful at that time, but I didn't have the right pieces of the puzzle to understand it fully. So I'm glad I held on to the book. That book is called The Tutankhamen Prophecies by Maurice Cottrell, published in the year 2000. This book is a trip, man, because there's extensive research that revealed both the ancient Egyptians and the Maya possessed a sophisticated understanding of sunspot activity and other astronomical phenomena. These facts have been confirmed by modern science.
They can predict them, yeah.
That's right. So, sunspots. Let's talk about the sunspots for a second. So, the surface of the sun is called the heliosphere, okay? The heliosphere and the photosphere, all right? And so, there's sunspots they're the cooler parts that are on the surface of the sun, okay? And these spots can be high and low in number or low in number. And the number of sunspots on the surface of the sun varies within an 11-year period called a sunspot cycle. The next sunspot maximum, also known as the solar maximum, is expected to take place between November 2024 and March 2026, but most likely around July 2025. Sunspots have a strong magnetic field, 1,000 times stronger than the Earth's. Now, there was a study done by the Economic Research Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. It showed a couple things. One, lower than average crop yields are associated with low sunspot activity. Two, higher than average yields are associated with high sunspot activity. Three, both the single and double sunspot cycles may give useful information and predictions of yield deviation. A double sunspot cycle is one that contains two single cycles. The study examined the relationship between crop yields and sunspot activity for wheat in Texas and Kansas, corn in Illinois and Nebraska, rice in Louisiana, and cotton in Texas. Data for wheat, corn, and cotton were from 1866 to 1973. Data for rice were from 1895 to 1972. William Stanley Jevons, a British economist, he lived from 1835 to 1882, suggested that there was a relationship between sunspot and crises in business cycles. He reasoned that since sunspots affect the Earth's weather, they then affect crop yields and therefore the economy. Jevons' reasoning has been called the sunspot theory, citing English agricultural price data from the years 1259 to the year 1400. Jevons observed that there appeared to be consistent trend in prices of various agricultural products over the 11-year solar activity cycles. More modern data suggests that even though there are many and complex variables that determine food production and prices, there is still an underlying association between food prices and the solar cycle. Okay, I hope y'all got that because that's major. So, sunspots and crop production. There's Dr. Sally Balunias of the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. And this doctor has done extensive research on the subject of the sun's effects on the Earth's climate. She concludes that although the sun's brightness changes only slightly with the solar cycles, the indirect effects of increased solar activity may still greatly magnify the sun's effect on Earth's temperatures. Change in temperature, in turn, has an effect on the production of crops. So, check this out. So, if the reptilian overlords know this, and they have this data, they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that stays on target, because that will generate the market trends that are predictable. They don't need quantum computers or AI to do these algorithms. If they know there's going to be a lower sunspot cycle, That means they're going to take the steps to make sure that the food production is low. That means that all these companies that have been losing their food processing factories to fire and explosions have probably been motivated by people that want to keep with the prediction of low output of crops during low solar minimums, a solar minimum. People, that's the big picture. That's when you zoom all the way out and you can see the whole field, the whole playing field. You can see the other end zone from another end zone, and you can throw unlimited touchdowns, unabated. You understand what I'm saying to you? That you cannot get caught up in this day-to-day stuff. You have to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together and realize what is causing this.
Look, rich people love to control the market, but they love to predict it even more. And when they can predict the outcome, it has the same effect. They're going to make a shitload of money and control a lot of people.
Pretty much. So this book, the Tutankhamen Prophecies, is super deep. Y'all need to check it out. It's super deep. This book talked about the fact that there would be human fertility is low during a solar minimum, when there's fewer sunspots. Okay, so two long-term studies in human physiology and pathology, researchers uncovered correlations between human health and the sunspot cycle. The research team, headed by William Hurushki of the University of South Carolina, first analyzed nearly 1.2 million consecutive serially independent screening pap smears from the health records of Dutch women that spanned from January 1983 through December 2003. This screening program included 1/3 of all females living in southern Holland, with both urban and rural women of all adult ages fully represented. Here the team determined the incidence of 6 infectious, pre-malignant, and malignant changes in the cervical epithelium. Additionally, the team examined records of physiological functions, being oral temperature, pulse rate, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, respiration rate, and peak expiratory flow, breathing, of a healthy man, and measuring five healthy men per day throughout the same 21-year period. And that was done by a biomedical scientist living in St. Paul, Minnesota. Team's work confirmed results from a previous study, which established slightly higher rates of human papillomavirus, HPV. Wow. So this study established higher rates of HPV, pre-malignant and malignant cervical changes in pap smears during the summer months. However, they found no correlations between human health abnormalities and any short-term environmental changes, but they did discover a more significant correlation with the 11-year sunspot cycle. For the healthy biomedical scientists, the team noted slight elevations in oral temperature, pulse rate, blood pressure, and respiration rate, and a slight decrease in the man's maximum expiratory flow that peaked several months after the occurrence of a solar sunspot maximum. For the Dutch women, the researchers detected a slight peak in 6 cervical pathologies just after the solar maximum. Solar sunspot maximum happens when solar flaring activity and solar ultraviolet B UVB radiation is the most intense. The sunspot maximum typically persists for a year or two. Thus, human subjects accumulated the most damage from the higher solar flaring activity and the more intense UVB radiation a few to several months after a solar sunspot maximum. However, the damage from UVB radiation is mitigated by the fact that when such radiation impacts Earth's stratosphere, it generates more ozone, which in turn blocks more of the UVB radiation from reaching the planet's surface. Furthermore, the more intense UVB radiation also explains the correlation of deleterious cervical changes during the summer. Furthermore, the more intense UVB solar radiation also explains the correlation. Predominantly Caucasian women living at a latitude of 52 degrees north, exposure to solar UVB radiation is considerably greater during the summer months. Independent studies demonstrate that UVB radiation activates many viruses, including HPV, and also suppresses cellular immune defenses. The word damage should perhaps be in quotes, since it took especially meticulous, accurate, or comprehensive medical measures to even detect the deleterious effects There is no warrant for any panic over the approaching solar sunspot maximums. However, detection of these slightly negative effects does in part explain why the Creator chose specific timing in Earth's history to create Adam and Eve. So it says, at any earlier point in time, humans would have been exposed to far more intense solar flaring activity. The greater the solar flaring activity, the greater the incidence of solar particle, X-ray, and UVB radiation on Earth. While the present era subjects humans to barely detectable medical risks, at any other time, those risks would severely limit both human health and longevity. Wow, dude. So
It would have changed our existence.
Yes. But okay. But when the solar flares slow down and there's fewer sunspots, that causes the magnetic field of the Earth to change. It's a pulsing. So when there's more when the magnetic field expands, it becomes bigger and greater with more sunspots, and it shrinks with lesser sunspots.
It also creates more ozone at a certain time. That actually gives the added protection from the radiation.
Check it out. So then what happens is humans are a trifold being, mind, body, and spirit. So this is affecting humans on a spiritual, cognitive, mental level, and physical. So there's, in the Bible it talks about the veil will be lifted. Okay, so is the veil being lifted because the sunspot activity has caused this drop in the sun's magnetic field, which has allowed humans to exhale spiritually and see more? Wow. Woo! That's
like
a lot.
I said, the ancient ones had a much better understanding than we could ever fully understand what's going on and how it affects us.
Right. But also, though, that's the ancient ones. But the fallen ones hate us, and they want us to suffer. So they're going to give their underlings orders to go and shrink the food supply, so then they can have greater control. And then it's not just the food supply, it's the trucking supply also, because now there's a shortage on DEF. DEF is diesel exhaust fuel additive that goes in it. It's clear stuff you have to put into a diesel truck. Anything that has a diesel engine, you have to put this DEF in all these newer engines. Now, older diesel trucks don't need DEF. It can just run just fine. But all the semis that are moving the food on the road need this DEF. And if you don't put DEF, ask any diesel mechanic, if you don't put enough DEF into there, that truck will pull over and shut down on the side of the road. So not only are you affecting the food at the grain mill, you're affecting it at the farm, which is, causing drought. You're blowing up and setting fire to the warehouses where they keep the food, okay, the storage facilities, yeah. And then you purposely make a shortage on DEF so that these truckers can't deliver the food. You're choking off the food supply at every outlet.
Yes, every level. Everything from where you get the food from, where you process the food, where you package the food, and the transportation to your grocery store. They will run out of food in front of you.
Right. So then what do? There's a couple things you can do. You need to find a temperature control place where you can get a foot locker that is lined with either hard plastic or metal so rats can't chew into it. And you need to put 50 to 100 pounds of grain and beans and oats in there, okay? And you need to have freeze-dried food you can put in there. And you want to have at least, 3 months to 6 months of food so you can ride this thing out. Now, this solar minimum lasts for 12 years. So after that, conditions improve. But these are things that you have to be aware of because it's affecting people and their health as well, right? It's causing diseases to increase, right? These minimums and maximums. So, dude, it's crazy because 12 years ago, I started seeing like these signs for like HPV You know, you go to LA, you'd be big ass billboards for like HPV, and I'm like, damn, I've never even heard of HPV before. Like, and I go back in like past, and I'm like, when has HPV ever been a thing? But then in the solar maximum, you know, that we experienced.
I remember you would hear about it with them old drug heads. Like whenever one of these old drug heads would like get old and about to die, they're like in their 60s and 70s. Either they had hepatitis C or HPV, and you're like, ugh, that don't sound good. And that was it. But even when we was in human growth class, they never talked about no HPV, not like this, because it was always junkies or people with fucked up lives that had that shit. It wasn't regular motherfuckers.
Right, but then it was never a big thing. But then it becomes a big thing, you know what I'm saying, 10 years ago. And
Solar flares and shit like that. We didn't realize
during the solar maximum, it's like, holy shit. This was a big deal because there was a bunch of disease right back then because of the solar maximum, and there was more sunspots. And so now there's fewer sunspots, and like you don't hear about it as much, right? Because we're going into the solar minimum. This is a trip, dude. Like, these are things you have to be aware of. Like, you got to zoom out and look at yourself on a galactic level and understand that the sun that you live on in this galaxy, that you live, controls everything. Dude, heavy shit, y'all. Like, for real. Like, go and read the Tutankhamen Prophecies and learn about how the Mayans and the Egyptians, you know, learned about these things and learned about fertility cycles with the solar minimum and the solar maximum. Dude, crazy stuff, y'all. Crazy stuff. So there are people out there setting fires to these food processing facilities, which is going to affect you here in the next month. So come mid-September, you're going to feel it when you go to the grocery store. You're going to see people fighting over food. I'm telling you now, put some food away. I'm telling you now, make sure you have gardening tools. Don't wait until then to go and buy gardening tools. Don't wait until then to go and buy some chickens, all right, to make eggs. Do not wait. Winter is coming for real, for real.
It's going to be a super cold winter. This ain't going to be no normal winter.
Yeah, but see, cold financially, cold socially, cold in so many ways.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. This shit ain't going to be no normal shit.
Right. So, because you know about this, what I'm telling you is, it's not about just stacking your money up. No. If you've been listening to the show, then you understand that you have to put some food away. You have to put, like, potable water away. Okay? You have to put, if they're going to turn off the power and have power running in, like, short cycles, then you're going to need a generator to charge your phones, charge your computers, so you can have access to heating your food, you know, to having warm water at certain like times of the day.
Look, like I said, even though this shit is being created and all this, you still have steps you can take to protect yourself. And don't think you're crazy because you're worried about the shit. Don't think you're like, look, it don't hurt to buy some extra ramen noodles. It don't hurt to put some water away.
But listen, also on some serious shit though, you don't want to just be living off ramen noodles, because it's about your quality of life. Find ways. Start now. Look at the ways that the old folks were surviving. How did black people survive the Great Depression? They had food that they were growing. Okay, if you don't have a farm, fine. Find what foods that you can can yourself, that you can make preserves of, that you can eat. Make your own peanut butter. If you don't like, rapeseed oil in your peanut butter, make your own peanut butter and put big ass jars of that stuff away. You know what I'm saying? And then, freeze some bread. Put some bread in the deep freezer. Freeze that shit. Okay? Listen, to keep food frozen, you have to run your generator for 1 hour every 4 hours to keep food frozen. Remember that. If you have a generator and you want to keep your freezer going, you have to run it once every hour for an hour. Excuse me. You run that generator for an hour every 4 hours to keep the food frozen.
Like I said, you're preparing for the worst. But the fact of the matter is, this shit is not by accident. You'll get through it. We'll get on the other side. And then hopefully we'll hold the motherfuckers who did the shit accountable.
Hey, what we're teaching you is long vision. How to see shit that's coming at you before it hits your neighbors, before it hits everybody else. Okay? And learn how to thrive in these situations. Hey, if you know this shit is coming, start a business that you know that you can make money off of during these fucked up times. That way you still making money. Just like use your forethought and your imagination to figure out what's going to be needed when there's a shortage of food. What's going to be needed when there's a shortage of like supplies. Just do the math, figure it out, use that long vision, and you will thrive. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.